Very good. Madam Secretary, now that I see Senator Bozeman, let's go ahead and take a
Chairman Nieves.
Here.
Vice Chairman Shaw.
Here.
Senators Leibler,
Here.
Romine,
Here.
Sylvie, Bozeman,
Here.
Nasheed.
Here.
All right, we have a quorum, so we will begin. We have one bill to hear today, and then we're going to have a discussion, almost executive session style, but not quite executive session, on Senator Bozeman's bill, the CBD Physician Authorization Act. So we're going to start out with Representative Funderburk. If you would be so kind as to introduce the committee to House Bill 1439.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Doug Funderburk. I represent the 103rd House District in St. Charles County. And the bill you have before you, House Committee Substitute for House Bill 1439, affectionately termed the Second Amendment Preservation Act, is a bill similar in form anyway to one that you've already reviewed in this committee in the form of a Senate bill earlier in this session, with a few minor changes. So I'll walk through the changes, and then if there's any questions, I guess, more related to the bill from its original language, we could discuss that, but I think all of you probably are pretty well familiar with the bill. What we've changed, or what the differences are between the Senate version and the House version, the first and most notable is we took the Second Amendment Preservation Act portion of the bill, and we've broken it out into several separate clauses, so that if there is a future court challenge to any specific section of the Second Amendment Preservation Act, then those will be severable from all the others, so it would not then end up, if there was a successful court challenge, wiping out the whole Second Amendment Preservation Act, which was the basis for the original bill to begin with. The next change will be, there was a provision put in to deal with the school security resource officer. There was an amendment by Representative Braden. He wanted to take it back to the language that he originally submitted and put into House Bill 436 last year. There was then an amendment put on the bill that dealt with, and this will be a new subject, dealt with corporate security officers and their oversight. Evidently, the corporate security officers in the state of Missouri used to have regulatory oversight by the very same police board that used to have oversight over the St. Louis and Kansas City police departments, which has been dissolved and no longer exists, at least in St. Louis now. The police department reports directly to city government. I guess it was one of those unintended consequences where now this group of security officers no longer have regulatory oversight, so they wanted to get that back through another agency. So that was added to this bill. And then one more thing that was in the amendment that I put on the bill, as well as the severability clauses, also I removed the criminal penalty provision that was in the original bill, as well as the bill from last year and in the Senate bill, because it appears to be fairly plainly obvious that will be challenged and probably would be a successful challenge at the federal level. And my concern is that the results of that type of challenge could net maybe even a worse result than what we're experiencing potentially today with some federal agencies, and that it might further give, through a court decision, more power to a federal agency when it comes to regulating firearms in the state than it currently exists today. So I chose to take that provision out as well. I think I've covered all of the differences. And again, so the bill, like I said, is, I think this committee is already fairly knowledgeable with, so, Mr. Chairman, I'll defer to you, but I would gladly entertain any questions, but at this point, I guess.
Very good. So my first question is, are you going to be as Gumby as I've been about all this? Because we probably still haven't seen the final version. And you and I are probably going to continue to be twisted and contorted into knots before this thing becomes a final product. So I just want somebody to share in my pain and misery.
The last phrase there kind of helped me understand what the question really was. So, gentlemen,
We don't have gentlemen.
This has been a labor of love. And I know that sometimes what I'm passionate about, some people could care less about. And sometimes what I'm passionate about, people have a similar passion, but in the opposite polarity. So, yes, I understand.
Very good. Do we have questions for the witness, Senator Holzman? I'm sorry, the sponsor, Senator Holzman.
Thank you. I noticed that one of the things that you took out was an amendment provision that we put in on the Senate floor that I sponsored that would allow for non-lethal defense sprays and mechanisms to be available. I can tell you firsthand that my school districts will never authorize and allow a teacher to carry a firearm into a school building, but they would entertain and consider non-lethal options. So why are we taking that option away from a school district to help train and protect students?
Now, based on how council advised me in the House, non-lethal protection can already be used in a school.
If it's a choice, but there's no training or designation for the use of it.
Right. So, but the primary reason that the original drafter and sponsor of that language wanted to go back to the original language was because I believe the provisions that were put in the Senate also required there to be a public meeting, and I somewhat shared in his belief that in part is kind of problematic in that for the public school district who choose to go to this level of resource, the potential criminal, the person with the ill intent now can basically pull up like a recipe and say, okay, I know that I'm safe in this school district, I'll be safe in that school, and I don't mean children, they'll be safe in that school district.
That trumps giving parents a voice in this process?
No, that's not what I'm saying, but I believe that you are creating targets when you do that, and nothing trumps parents having input, because the parents hopefully did a good job in electing the people that they put on these school boards to make decisions that sometimes are made in an open public format, and sometimes decisions are made in executive session, not in a public forum.
But if we statistically believe that placing guns in the school actually make the children less safe, because the number of accidents that occur from possessing and owning a gun far outweigh any active shooter incidents that we've had in the state of Missouri, don't you think that a parent has a right to voice their opinion on such a large decision, rather their children are going to be exposed to someone carrying a 6-shooter on their hip?
I haven't seen those statistics, and again, gentlemen, since this really wasn't my bailiwick to begin with, I've kind of argued it to the extent that I can.
Why has the bill
I'm not going to defend a position to the point where I'll say I think you're wrong, because I'm defending a position that wasn't mine to begin with. But I think I understand where you're coming from, and I've asked him to come and talk to you and sit down and see if the two of you can kind of find where that middle ground is, to where the elements that you're concerned about will be addressed, as well as the security that he's trying to accomplish as well.
Right.
And I'm hopeful that that's what he's going to do, but I don't know how much more I can defend his position, other than to say that those are his views.
Right. Well, and I would just suggest that in our effort, the senator from Franklin and I worked through the summer together on trying to find a way to lower the resistance to this bill.
Right.
And we found that path forward, where I was willing to vote no on the bill, but feeling like there were safeguards put in place. I wasn't trying to prohibit a school district from taking that action, but was trying to put regulations in place that if they do take that action, at least the parents could have an opportunity to voice their concerns to their elected officials before that action is taken, and then provide a non-lethal option for districts who choose not to put lethal weapons in the hands of their teachers and we as a Senate agreed that that was the position we were going to take.
Right.
As the bill sponsor, I'm asking you that the Senate maintains that position on the precept that the resistance to the overall bill will be lessened. Is that a position that as a bill sponsor you're willing to engage in dialogue over?
As long as there's been a fair conversation with the House member who has these concerns, I'm going to support whatever the product is, the end product. So I can't say that I had any severe heartburn over the language that you had put in the bill, but I have to consider that, you know, I have to defend my House members as well, but not to the extent of killing the bill. So
Okay.
I'll work with you, and hopefully he will as well. Thank you.
Further questions? And to my good friend Representative Funderburg, before one of these other senators gets bothered by it, there's no gentlemen. There's no ladies either. No ladies or gentlemen in the Senate. Senator Nasheed.
Tell him, Senator.
There's no ladies in the Senate.
Before I ask you this question, I would like to tell you a short story about a guy who 30 years ago found himself locked up, and as a result of being locked up too many times, he became a felon. And he, right now, to this day, that felony charge lingers throughout his life. So he cannot carry a gun as a result of that. Okay, he went shoplifting and he stole some things, and then he went back shoplifting and stole some things, and years later he asked me, he said, why, you know, I haven't gotten into any trouble, why can't I get a conceal and carry permit? You know, why am I being excluded from a permit? I want to go and I want to hunt, you know, and I want to be able to protect my family and the privacy of my own home. Would you be willing to allow an amendment on to exempt felons who's seeking conceal and carry permits?
You know, I'm a firm believer in that once you've paid your debt to society, your constitutional rights should be fully restored. I guess I would like to sit down and have that conversation with you, and maybe to a deeper study. I don't understand quite exactly that process and what does it take to restore someone's full rights.
Well, you can expunge this record. We can just do an expungement, and once we expunge the record of that individual, I mean, he said to me, he said, look, I haven't gotten into any trouble, you know, in over 30 years.
Right.
And at this point, I should be able to go get my conceal and carry license.
And I don't think I could disagree with that. I really don't.
So would you be willing to allow for me to put an amendment on this particular piece of legislation to fix that problem?
Well, you surely don't need my permission, but I would like
Well,
to.
I want to be respectful to your
And I want to work with you on that. I'm just saying I'm not familiar with why you would or wouldn't, and I'd like to work with you to through that so I can learn for myself. Because quite frankly, you know, there's probably things I did 30 years ago that I wouldn't be all that proud of today. But I don't think I should lose my God-given rights nor my constitutional rights because of something that maybe it's just a record that needs to be expunged. But is that what you're asking, that we would, if someone's records have been expunged, and I'm more making a statement than ask a question, let's sit down and have that conversation and see if we can figure it out, because I don't know exactly how this works and what you're talking about. But if it's something that's reasonable, we can do it. I would gladly support it.
Okay, what about the amendment dealing with the 72-hour reporting? Can you support that? Stolen and lost guns.
I'm not too sure I'd be on safe ground there to say that I would like to see that back in the bill. I don't think that's there's enough pressure right now from every
Special-
outside
special
influence.
interest.
I mean, even, well, you know, often people that call me, you know, want to know why I'm doing the NRA's building here, and they're bidding, and I'm like, well, the NRA doesn't back this bill at all. So, I mean, this truly is a labor of love. Some might say misguided, but this isn't even a bill that's endorsed by the NRA.
Do you think we should report, do you think we should report stolen guns here in the state of Missouri?
I thought, yeah,
Or law?
yes, I think so. But I would, I guess, much rather see that be a separate bill. Because there's I think, a lot more to that discussion than just, do you report that a gun's been stolen?
Okay, let's go to the bill. The section 21.750 open carry ordinance. How would that work? Open carry, I mean, can
Well,
you take
it's
a gun?
not illegal in the state of Missouri to open carry now. But I think what you have is more and more you'll see in some local governments try to establish their own regulations over the ability to open carry, which to me is nonsensical. I can't understand how something that is allowed in the state of Missouri because it's a right, an enumerated right in a constitution, becomes something now that a local government can begin to regulate. That's the purpose of those first 10 amendments of the Constitution, is to make sure that all, so I say men, but all people understand. Our founding fathers took a certain set of our rights and put them above law, so that we could never start making restrictions on those rights as legislators. That was to protect those rights for the citizens of this country, and in this case the state, and to protect them from government encroachment. So I don't understand how this is happening, but with that amendment in here, I think that puts a much stronger restriction on local governments trying to erode at.
Even cities like myself, we are like, we have local control. And it's a home rule city.
Right.
So we rule our own home.
To the extent of laws and statutes and ordinances.
Right, so.
You don't get to rewrite the Constitution just because you have
So the
a charter form
Constitution,
of
where in the
government.
Constitution does it talk about open carry?
Concealed.
Open carry.
You have the right to keep and bear arms.
And that's fine and good. Okay, but what about open carry? You can keep your gun and you can bear arms, but I mean, it doesn't have to be like I walk in the store and everyone can look at and see that I have a gun. I mean, it doesn't have to be that obvious, right?
I don't know what, I don't think it needs to be that obvious, but I don't know what the harm is.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Other questions for the sponsor? Do you have witnesses to call, or are we just going to?
No, I don't personally have witnesses.
This for time planning purposes, how many people?
There is one more element to the bill that was added in, and I forgot to mention. I'm just having a rough day. I also, in 2 different places in the bill, add knowingly to, if your rights have to knowingly be violated before, in this case, you can have a course of civil action. And I forgot to mention that. I've tried to address the issues that law enforcement brought to my office literally the Wednesday before we went on spring break, after a year and a half of working on, as well as you working on this bill. So that provision was added also, I failed to mention. My apologies.
Very good. How many do we have who plan to testify on this bill, whether for or against? If you plan to testify on this bill, if you would raise your hand. 1, 2, 3. Very good. We will call the first person who wishes to testify in favor of the bill. First person to testify in favor. Don't all trip over each other.
Mr. Chairman, I didn't intend, unless there's questions, to go into any details to amount to anything. On behalf of the Missouri Family Network, Carrie Messer, would like to go on record supporting the bill. I might instigate a question, because I did want to make the statement that as far as non-lethal forms of defense, there's no law that prohibits that. I for like me, don't understand where there is in statute a prohibition from a school having public forums or non-public forums to determine that policy, because that's not an issue that's prohibited by state policy. So I don't understand how that interacts. So if there's questions, I might have to sit down.
Okay. So basically what I think you're saying is, as it stands right now, school districts can authorize non-lethal,
That's my understanding.
and school districts determine whether or not they want to have a public hearing or, you know, so I think that probably has caused a question. Senator Holcomb?
I think Dr. Schroff and I had worked this out on the floor. The possession of a device spray is not prohibited. It's not against the law. But there's nothing in statute that allows for the title of school protection officer, along with the post-certified training, to be administered to the teacher who would like to openly carry a non-lethal defense device. And that is what I'm trying to accomplish, is having the same type of training that you want to make available for a lethal weapon. I want to make that same training available for a non-lethal weapon, because just because you can buy pepper spray at the store doesn't mean you know how to use it, when to use it, what are the ramifications of using it. And I think since post-certified training is going to be available in this bill, I want to make it accessible for that as well. That's the first part. The second part is there's nothing prohibiting a school district from having a public hearing. I want to require having a public hearing before you allow guns to be in schools.
Not a legislator, I can't vote on that. I would encourage you to draft the bill and let's talk about it.
Okay, but you see the difference? You see why I bring forward?
So you do understand, I'm not trying to engage in debate, but I don't know of anything in state statute that prohibits the school district from adopting the policy and requiring their people to have the training.
Well,
And to
the
create a
same could be
training
said
program.
right now about lethal firearms as well. Right now, state statute says if school board wants to vote to allow people to conceal carry on their campuses, they can. But we're taking the extra step to say, if you're going to do that, then you should have these requirements. I'm saying, fine, but have the school district have the option of allowing non-lethal training as well.
Right. It begs the question on my part, and I'm a little out of order to ask you a question, but it begs the question in my mind, do the insurance companies for the school districts prohibit them from having non-lethal products the way the insurance companies tell them you can't have the lethal products?
I don't know the answer
Because
to that.
that is what's driving the legislation from our perspective.
Again, what is the opposition?
Again, I don't know the insurance.
Are you
company's
opposed to
policies.
having teachers have a non-lethal option? If my school district says we're never going to allow guns in schools, but we want our teachers to have something, are you opposed to them having something in
principle,
training?
no. In principle, no.
No, you're not opposed to it. Okay, thank you.
All right, other questions, Senator Shaw?
Just to follow up on Senator Holzman's. So basically, the situation is that the bill is designed to allow them to carry guns. Senator Holzman wants them to have the alternative to carry non-lethal defenses. What you're saying is, I think what you're bringing is a possibility that there are a set of school districts who would go ahead and pay whatever extra insurance premium to allow them to carry guns. But if the law says that you have to offer either one or both, then you're afraid that those school districts, now all of a sudden, there's a whole bunch of districts that wouldn't carry guns because of the increased cost of insurance having to carry both. Or is that something? Are you trying to say that the insurance?
I'll answer the best I can. And the best I can answer is, there's nothing that I know of that prevents the schools currently from doing the non-lethal.
But they don't
But
because of insurance.
the insurance companies don't say, pay this extra premium and you can do lethal. protection. Insurance companies, some school districts, insurance companies are telling them, you can't do it at all.
Or
It's not an option.
we're not gonna insure you if you do it.
That's right.
Well, are they not gonna insure the school if they allow for someone to have a weapon?
We need to bring the insurance industry in here to answer some of these questions. I'm not.
Well, there is the
I can only
reality.
tell you what I know.
Okay, thank
And I
you.
apologize that it's limited knowledge. And we support the bill because it
So-
does address the specific problem we're aware of.
If a legislator wanted to make it so that school districts could carry weapons and at the same time be insured, there may be a requirement that we insist that insurance companies that insure schools have policies that allow for the coverage of them should they decide to have weapons. But yeah, you can. We do it all the time. We said that health insurers have to offer health insurance, guaranteed issue. So,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I apologize if I sparked something I didn't intend to.
Other questions for this witness?
Thank you.
All right, seeing none, please leave your witness form. Anyone else to speak in favor of the bill? Please come forward.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, for the record, my name is Ron Calzone of Missouri First. And before I begin my testimony, before my 3 minutes starts, I do have a presentation to the committee of about 700 witness forms. About 704, there are 3 informational and 1 against. And I do want to report that a lot of the 700 people that are in favor of this bill do have angst over the removal of the criminal penalties provisions. And so they are, if you go, and I'll send you the link like I'll usually do so you can make comments, but many of them are asking for some other additional protections added to it. And I might address that in a minute. So, beginning my testimony. To address some of the questions about school protection officers, I might point out that in 590.200, post-commission training, subdivision 6 requires, this is new language, instruction in the proper use of self-defense spray devices. So the bill passes like it's written right now, they will be trained in spray devices. And I think that Mr. Messer is also accurate. I don't believe there's anything in this bill that prohibits a school district from requiring or having a public hearing if they choose to. So and before you lay into me, Senator, I fought for your language on the outside. And I think actually it's beneficial. I think that if we required public hearings, that people would rise up and they would demand that their schools provide protection for their students. We have some political realities to deal with, and one of them is, I think the way this bill ended up is a good compromise. I might also add, there's nothing in this bill right now, the way it's written, that requires a school protection officer to carry a gun. Last year it did. It's written right now, it's not a requirement. Now, if he has a gun, he's got to keep it in his possession, in his personal control. But there's nothing saying he's got to carry a gun every single day. So he's going to have the training in the spray. He has the option of carrying the spray because it's already legal. And so I think that we have, in effect, what you were after with your amendments. Senator, I've been working with you.
Thank you.
Okay, questions for this witness? I'll give you the first option since your name was mentioned.
I don't think he's done this testimony.
Okay, actually I'm not. I did want to say that there's a couple of things that are of concern in here. There's some new language that was added that makes an 11th gun felony in the state of Missouri. And it's language that deals with possessing a gun and a controlled substance at the same time. It's probably a good idea to have extra penalties for somebody that's possessing a gun and illegal controlled substance at the same time. But if you kind of trace the statute, you'll find out that the Department of Health gets to define what is a controlled substance. And so by rule, we could have the Department of Health creating new gun felonies in Missouri. So our recommendation is that that language be removed. And there also is some language that I think Representative Underwood mentioned dealing with corporate security advisors. It's probably a fine thing to do, to have another way for them to be licensed and regulated, but it clearly has single subject issues. We don't want it to affect the rest of the bill, so it's our opinion that needs to come out. And then something else needs to be done to deal with the federal threat. Penalties are gone. We need to do something with that, and I think there's a substitute maybe that addresses that. And so with that, I'll answer any questions you might have.
Very good. Senator Holden, I'll give you first
Thank you.
whack.
No, I do appreciate you working with this on me, or working with me on this. And my only suggestion would be is, look, if you've got someone who's willing to lower the resistance to the overall bill by adding language that they're comfortable with, and you say it does it anyways, you know, a single House member may or may not be able to stop something, but I think a single senator has proven in the past that they do have the wherewithal to make it difficult for final passage.